And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in business with the showdown between the Empire and the Warriors of Chaos, a classic duel of duels, and it is going to be a Harry Potter duel as well. We do have Balthazar Gelt facing off against the mighty KFC Bird. Should be quite a bit of fun. Now, as far as the build goes, I wanted to try something very different, like a super wide build with tons of missiles and just tons of numbers. I think my army count should be substantially higher, so we are a couple hundred models more, which is pretty rare for the Empire. Oftentimes the Empire will have a lot of Outriders and maybe more elite armies with like greatswords, and I do have greatswords mixed in here, but also a ton of halberds and a little bit of pike and shot action going on. So Balthazar Gelt is going to be coming in with Plague of Rust, as well as Searing Doom. Searing Doom on blobs of Chaos Infantry, and the Plague of Rust to synergize with the Crossbowmen, as well as the Knights of the Blazing Sun, because without Plague of Rust, Knights of the Blazing Sun might struggle against some more of the Chaos armor, like Chaos Warrior Great Weapons or Chaos Knights, although Chaos Knights aren't super common in this matchup, but very much an experimental build. I would say the more meta is probably using Volkmar or Franz, and then from there also using Outriders. You know, the long rifle variants are extremely good against Chaos. And I do like Franz because he's very effective at taking down Warp Chicken, but we'll see if the Halberds and the Knights of the Blazing Sun can do it. So, great swords in the front, Sigmar Sons, more Flagellants on the flanks. I think in total we have 3 great swords, 2 crossbows to deal with Marauder Great Weapons. Chaos Marauder Great Weapons are very common in this matchup, and then 4 Halberds and 2 Knights of the Blazing Sun as a sweeper unit. Now for the Army of Hadri's here, pretty awesome Chaos host. He's got a bunch of Chaos Warhounds, Marauder Horsemen, very, very standard, oftentimes throwing axes to deal with Demogorph Knights as well as Knights of the Blazing Sun. 2 Exalted Heroes as well as the Warp Chicken with the Final Transmutation, and a very basic Chaos Infantry Corps. This is a pretty rare sighting of a situation in which the Empire has a pretty substantial advantage in the infantry fight, which is pretty cool. So Sigmar Sons stand ready to do battle with the foul Heed Knights of Slaanesh. You can see the Mirror Guard moving in, nice and shiny. Trying to think what the color, I guess it would be like a Stormhost Silver if you're really talking about the color of that armor, but pretty damn cool looking. So Warp Chicken getting on the flank. I'm going to be repositioning my army a little bit, getting the crossbows to start shooting into the Chaos Marauders with great weapons. Balthazar Gelt kind of eyeing the prize, looking to see if there's any debuffs he wants to be dropping here, but for the most part, not really too many good targets yet. And seeing his army here, Final Transmutation might have been a little bit better, but how could I have known he was going to bring the 2 Exalted Heroes? But, you know, I think that Plague of Rust does have some really nice play against Chaos. Like, for example, if I wanted to hit the Mirror Guard, for example, you know, it could do some nice work. Anyways, Mirror Guard going to be engaging against Flagellants. Good play there from Hadri's, and the throwing weapons now getting into my greatswords here. In the meantime, Warp Chicken does take a little bit of a volley, and yeah, he takes some damage. He has pretty crazy good missile resist. Also, my greatswords taking some damage from the throwing axes, so in a minute I will be pulling them back and replacing them with halberds. And the frontline fighting is underway, so the Chaos Marauder Great Weapons who are being focused by bowfire, though they are doing some damage, the greatswords are able to pretty massively dominate this fight. You can see the Chaos Infantry really getting tattered, even with the Warp Chicken being here. Now, over here, it's a little bit messier. Flagellants are in a 2v1 fight, but it's pretty good. The way that the Mirror Guard are lined up here, they're very vulnerable to focus fire, and Balthazar Gelt is going to be summoning the Winds of Magic once again in the deep to drop it here on the Mirror Guard, which actually does some really reasonable damage. That was an extremely good Searing Doom right there. And once again, Hadri's gets a pretty cost-effective engagement. Chaos Marauders onto the Greatswords. Granted, Greatswords still do dominate that fight pretty heavily. Aside from that, we have some missile skirmishing going on. Silver bullets and crossbows shooting into the horsemen. 2 units of horsemen are pretty much fully offline, but Hounds and Chaos Knights now pouring into my battle lines. And the Chaos Knights found a very nice charge against Sigmar Sons. Sigmar Sons are pretty lightly armored themselves, don't have great armor piercing, though they are unbreakable. It's going to be very tough for them to hold off a legion of Chaos Knights, and you can see the casualties of that battle are really reflecting that. But Knights of the Blazing Sun and Halberds holding back a lot of the infantry. The bow and gunfire is still very functional here, and we have a very razor-close game on our hands, as a Final Transmutation does come down from the chicken there. It nails some of my Knights of the Blazing Sun and Greatswords, but overall, not too bad. So Knights of the Blazing Sun do bounce back, jumping on the Chaos Knights. Halberds surge forward from the backfield, and the crossbows are going to be retreating through the ranks. And a Searing Doom is going down here as well, as a couple of the Chaos Knights are dragged down in the Sigmarite Halberds, and the Searing Doom does pick off a couple of those Knights as well, although also doing a little bit of friendly fire damage. So overall, I don't know if that Searing Doom was worth it. Gelt getting in there. He's got his, you know, decent little charge bonus of 70 on Quicksilver, pretty respectable. Chaos Knights are trapped in Halberds, but, you know, my backfield is a little bit open, and I don't quite have the mobility to deal with those Chaos Knights here. You can see these Knights of the Blazing Sun are retreating back. These other ones looping back from their crusade in the front lines. They do fall a little bit behind on the bounce of power, but the infantry fight is going quite well. Most of the Chaos Infantry is pushed back. The Halberds are holding all over the place. 60 greatswords here, 90 right here, and there is the Plague of Rust. Putting the Chaos Knights down to 60 armor is going to make the Knights of the Blazing Sun just absolutely dunk on them. And the Lances are couched, and instantly you can see many of the Chaos Knights are going to be falling to that shock damage. taking a lot of losses as Balthazar Gelt jumps in as well, and we are able to buckle them. And the crossfire from the handguns, also enough to probably finish them off. So we do get the elite Chaos Knights off the battlefield. Searing Doom also goes down. I figured there was still some Chaos Knights there. Does a little bit of damage, I would imagine. And the handgunners, very functional here, finishing off the Chaos Knights. They're shattered down to one model, down to the last. Those Chaos Knights just getting hammered. And a lot of Empire infantry is coming back. So though I was behind with the bounce of power, I didn't feel terrible. I was kind of like, you know what? Maybe if the halberds and greatswords can really endure into the late game, we should be able to do some tricks. And the handgunner fire shooting into your boy Marauder Horseman here, as the Knights of the Blazing Sun look for some engagements. And here I had a potential opportunity as well. With the Plague of Rust off cooldown, maybe the Exalted Heroes could be brought down by like a basic cavalry unit. And Gelt is just trying his best to deal with the big chicken, who is being very, very disruptive. But I knew I had to watch out for a big Final Transmutation. I knew he was saving one to the back pocket. So Knights of the Blazing Sun do charge in, get some good shock damage onto the Exalted Hero, even with the armor. But Balthazar Gelt's going to be coming in now as well with the overcasted, not Final Transmutation, but Plague of Rust, putting it down to 40 armor. And suddenly Gelt's really getting in there with some work. A lot of damage going on the Exalted Hero. You can see he loses about 200 HP there in the blink of an eye, and hopefully more damage will be getting taken as his armor is very low. Warp Chicken fighting halberds, taking some damage, but for the most part, great mass and escapability. The chicken should be able to escape most threats there. Knights of the Blazing Sun do take some heavy losses and break. Obviously, the Exalted Hero is no slouch, fighting for corn there, or Zinch probably in the case of Warp Chicken being here. And the Marauder Horseman throwing axe is doing an excellent job of cleaning up my cavalry. So I'm a little bit behind on the bounce of power, but you can see I do have a fair amount of troops left. A full health unit of halberds here, 60 halberds, great swords, Sigmar Sons, and a unit of handgunners. And honestly, Chaos is looking pretty tattered. I have even more great swords over here. It's really just the characters that I'm struggling to finish here. So the Exalted Hero moves in, a couple halberds trying their best, handguns ripping some shots, 6 leadership, and we don't quite get them. I wanted to go in with Gelt really, really badly here, but with the Horseman coming in to pin me down potentially, as well as the other supporting Chaos Heroes, it felt like a little bit of a scary engagement. So more Horsemen, more Chaos Infantry moving in. Gelt's going to be supporting the fight over here, as the Halberdiers probably will have to turn in fight. So the Halberds are lowered, they charge into the Great Weapon Infantry, and the Sigmarites should have a pretty favorable fight here considering the numbers advantage. And we'll be able to overwhelm these Chaos Infantry. Searing Doom going down over there, trying to fend off some of those hounds, but overall just doesn't do a whole lot. Probably did more friendly damage than it did useful damage. Balthazar Gelt and Company, Staff of Alans is active. Chaos Marauder Infantry as well as the Mirror Guard have returned, but they are taking some damage. That's what's cool about halberds is if halberds have to fight against like Chaos Warriors and Chaos Warrior great weapons, they can actually do pretty well. They have good AP values, and that's why we've seen a bit of a prevalence of the Empire meta in bringing halberds against dwarves, because it's an extra armor piercing unit. Great swords being collapsed on by just chaff infantry, but honestly, the overwhelming numbers of Chaos here probably going to be able to clean up the fight, despite the fact that I have a fair amount of halberds. The hero core of Chaos is far too strong, and Balthazar Gelt isn't really like a big playmaker. He's not someone like Franz or your boy Volkmar, who is going to bring you back in the game. Searing Doom going down here. That one was okay. Did a little bit of damage, probably about 300 to those Chaos Warriors. But from here, the last of my brave Empire Halberdiers will hold. We finish off the hounds here. We have more great swords, but with Warp Chicken just probably having another Final Transmutation, which he does here, that is going to be sealing the deal. And Balthazar Gelt will be getting turned to gold to end the game, which is very, very thematic. You can see we fly around a little bit, but that is pretty much it. So GG, well played. It was a fun match. Pretty experimental build. Overall, I thought I had some teeth. My execution was okay. Wasn't flawless, of course, by any stretch of the imagination. Probably could have protected my missiles better, but at the end of the day, I just felt like the whole gimmick with Gelt and Plague of Rust just isn't worth it. Like, why do that when you can just bring, like, an armor-piercing lord and just replace these with handgunners? Like, it just seems silly, right? So this style of play, 100% just replace Gelt. Unless you're going for Final Transmutation. In that case, you can kill the characters, get a little bit more damage. In that case, I think that would be fine. If I just switched that magic, the build would be very functional and probably pretty good. But otherwise, I think cutting Gelt and getting like a Franz or a Volkmar type character, probably Franz. I think Franz is pretty good at picking out these characters. A life caster to heal the great swords as well. They would really love the healing. Cut the 2 crossbows, maybe get a 3rd handgunner, and just like maybe an extra cavalry unit at the expensive 1 greatsword. We can actually go to the drawing board. Very well played, Hadries, man. That was a great game. His Warp Chicken went pretty ham. Gelt didn't do badly though. Did get 1300 value, which was cute. Handgunners did good, 1200, 500. The crossbows were pretty inefficient. And we handled the great weapon infantry pretty well. So overall, I don't know. Yeah, we got to go to the drawing board on that style play. My old school is using like, Demogryph Knights and that sort of thing. Empire has a ton of builds. That's why they're my favorite faction. Like, you can play so many different ways, but let's just go with like a Franz build for now. So we're going to cut some abilities there. With Franz, you're pretty much always required to bring a life caster. Otherwise, you're just going to pay the troll toll. We can still do like an elite greatsword build for sure. We can get the handgunners. And if you want to go for like a defensive halberd style play, we can get like 4 of those. And probably a 3rd handgunner would do the trick. You can even get a huntsman unit too. The single huntsman can be okay because he can really counter the horseman with his range and arc of fire. So I kind of like that. I think that's kind of a cool thing. And aside from that, we got some options for some cavalry units. You can even do the defensive 1 sweeper cavalry since now you have healing. So with the halberds defending the backfield, you could do like the Royal Altdorf Griffites, who of course cause terror and can really buckle off Chaos troops. They're a little bit more vulnerable though. Knight of the Blazing Sun, you can cut this, get Sigmar Suns in their stead. 2 greatswords will do the trick. The halberd play is like interchangeable. You don't even like, they're cool. I'm trying to think about their efficiency though against like more meta chaos builds. I suppose, yeah, they have the good armor piercing and anti-large, but you could also just replace them with spears if you want to. I'm trying to stay in the halberd school of thought, right? So you got the handguns, you got the range units, you probably just need an extra cavalry unit, so maybe just get that, Knight of the Blazing Sun, and then like get a spear. Something like this, if you want to like play halberd style, is going to probably be much, much better. Sigvald's a little bit of a problem, but cycle charging Franz can deal with them. And greatswords also are helpful, and you have handgunners and all sorts of stuff like that. A build that I've used against Chaos in the past as well, so let me see. This build is pretty outdated at this point. You have Empire versus Chaos with Volkmar. Yeah, you can see greatswords, spears, handgunners, cavalry, Volkmar with nets to allow better focus fire with your handgunners. That's definitely a very strong style play. And then Empire versus Chaos, this is a Franz build, I think. Yeah, this is Franz. So this is like a little bit more meta. Like Outriders, Empire Knights to deal with their mobility, some, infantry and all sorts of good stuff. So yeah, give those builds a try. Let me know what you think. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. Well played to my opponent, Hadrius, as always. And we will see you guys on the other side. Take care of yourselves.